Okay. Good evening. I'm Reverend Simon Shadowlight, an associate minister at Mile High Church, a Centers for Spiritual Living community in Lakewood, Colorado. I welcome you to tonight's prayer and unity. I have the honor of being part of the Multifaith Leadership Forum of Metro Denver. The MLF is a network of faith leaders from the Metro Denver area who are committed to building relationships of understanding and support across all faith traditions, as well as serving as a voice and resource for multi-faith engagement in the Denver area. Violent people do not create peace. If we are to serve as peacemakers, we must first examine and remove our inner obstacles to peace. It is in this spirit that I offer to you an original story called The Instrument of Peace. And I encourage you to experience it, to listen to it in the same way you would a meditation or a prayer. In that sense, I invite you to bring your awareness to your heart center. Become aware of the rise and fall, the in and out of your breath. And imagine a time when the earth was younger, and there was the sound of a drum in the distance. 2 beats repeating. The sound of the heart drum beating the heartbeat of the universe. Imagine a time when every creature, every living heart, the earth itself, attuned to that sound and beat in spontaneous synchronicity. But then something happened. The people got so busy and their lives filled with such confusion that they forgot to listen. And their hearts no longer beat as one. And they felt separate and alone. And there was no peace. Let me tell you a story about a young woman who felt the other had dealt her a great hurt. Who was the other? What was the hurt? When did it all begin? I don't know. Does it really matter? The young woman herself probably could not remember, not anymore. One night, she had a dream. She saw a vision. She saw before her the spirit of her great-grandfather, and she saw he wanted to speak with her. He brought with him an invitation for her to become a peacemaker, to become an instrument of peace. He brought her the opportunity and the challenge of walking the path of peace. And he asked her if she would accept this great burden. Well, what could the young woman say? I'd like to tell you, she said yes. I'd like to tell you, she said, of course, great-grandfather, I am delighted to do so. But that is not what she said. What she said was, great-grandfather, I have lived under a mantle of darkness for so long that I don't understand the words that you are speaking. I have the other in my world, and I will see the other pay for the thorns that have grown in my heart and the darkness that has infected my world. I will have revenge. I will see blood met with blood, tear returned tenfold. What is this word peace? Why would I want it? And the spirit of her great-grandfather smiled a strange smile like an old coyote, and he reached out and he placed his hand on her chest. And the shell which had grown to protect her heart cracked open, and she gasped, and she felt something she had forgotten long ago. She felt newborn, like she had before she knew about the other. And there was a taste in her mouth, and it tasted good, and she wanted to fill her emptiness with the source of that taste. And she caught a faint sound in the distance. What was it? A drum, maybe? She wasn't sure. And she asked, what did you do to me? And the spirit of her great-grandfather said, the first inner obstacle to peace is the lack of a desire for peace. Without the desire for peace, there is no journey to be taken. She said, "Great-grandfather, now I understand the taste of this word peace, and I want it in my life and in my world. I will walk the path of peace. Tell me what I must do." And the spirit of her great-grandfather said, "You must forgive the other. The path of peace begins in your heart and leads you through the heart of all those with whom you contend." Upon hearing this, her face grew dark and her body got tight and stiff. And in the tightening of her body, she got smaller and her energy dimmed like a candle burning the last of its wax. And if you'd seen her right then, you would have thought she was dying. And I'm here to tell you, in some ways, she was. And she said, "Great-grandfather, I cannot imagine that. I can imagine many things. I can imagine two suns rising in the sky. I can imagine strange beasts the world has never known. I can imagine forgotten secrets told around lonely campfires ages ago, but I cannot imagine forgiving the other. No, great-grandfather, do not ask this of me. It is not possible." And the spirit of her great-grandfather smiled a strange smile and reached out his hand and this time touched her forehead. And she felt a clap of thunder, and she was certain that her head had split open, and that in her disrespect, the spirit of her great-grandfather had slain her. But then she realized instead that a seed had been planted, and that seed sent its roots down into the fertile darkness of her spirit, and that seed grew into a tree, and its harvest was the fruit of possibility. And off in the distance, she heard a sound, and she was sure now it was a drum, but it faded in and out, and she could not hear it well. And she asked the spirit of her great-grandfather, "What did you do to me?" And the spirit of her great-grandfather said, "The second inner obstacle to peace is the belief that forgiveness is not possible." And the young woman said, I believe, great-grandfather. I believe forgiveness is possible. Once the other has righted the wrong, made a settlement, made restitution, there could be peace between us." And the spirit of her great-grandfather got that strange smile again, and the young woman said, "Wait. Forget about the restitution. Perhaps if the other was simply willing to take the first step, we could open the doorway to the possibility of peace." And the spirit of her great-grandfather stretched out both his arms and touched her legs, and the young woman felt the ground open, and the soul of the earth cried out to her, and everywhere she felt the earth moving under her, and the blood raced through her legs, and she felt like she imagined a wild stallion must feel when it's racing a spring storm across the plains. And she heard the drum again, 2 beats repeating over and over, or maybe it wasn't a drum, maybe it was her own heart, for she was all out of breath. And she asked the spirit of her great-grandfather, "What did you do to me?" And the spirit of her great-grandfather said, "The third inner obstacle to peace is the paralyzing stubbornness which demands that the other act first." And for a moment, there was silence. And it seemed as if the young woman was deep in thought. It seemed as if she had left this world, so intent was she upon her thoughts, and she thought, and slowly a look of sorrow came upon her, and her eyes watered, and the spirit of despair entered into her, and she said, "But great-grandfather, I am only one. What can I do? This battle, this conflict, this disagreement, this struggle, this war, this wound has gone on so long and has grown so big, it is beyond me. I want peace, and I believe forgiveness is possible, and I'm willing to take the first step. But to what end, when surely my actions cannot affect great change?" And the spirit of her great-grandfather smiled, but this time not so slyly. This time the young woman saw not a wily coyote, but the gentle smile she remembered so well in the face of her father and her father's father. And the spirit of the great-grandfather grasped her arms, and she felt them grow and lengthen like great tree branches, and she felt them stretch across the earth and embrace it like a mother holding her newborn babe. And from these branches grew the fruits of her actions, and this fruit nourished many. And the young woman realized that all of this had come about from just one seed. And she heard the drum beating. It was the heart drum, and it was everywhere, in her heart and in her head and in her world. And the young woman surmised, without the spirit of her great-grandfather saying anything, that the fourth inner obstacle to peace is the belief that one person cannot make a difference. And the young woman wept. And for a while, there was nothing but the sound of her sobbing, which came rhythmically, like waves crashing on the shore. After a time, her sobs subsided, and she looked at the spirit of her great-grandfather and she asked, "I grasp that I can make a difference. But how, great-grandfather? How? I am overwhelmed with possibilities. Which choice is the right choice?" And the spirit of her great-grandfather, smiling, embraced her and whispered in her ear, "The fifth inner obstacle to peace is indecisiveness in the face of possibility. The path of peace takes many forms, but there is only one destination. Everyone has their part to play, and the Great Spirit has made us all different colors and brushes us upon the canvas of life in a way unique to each. No two, in that sense, are the same. Great-grandfather, to walk the path of peace, light the areas of darkness within your own life, for you are part of the whole, and when you change, the whole cannot help but change with you. In this way, the Great Spirit of life will make of you an instrument of peace." What else these two spoke of late into the night as the stars danced in the sky, I cannot tell you, and thus my story is done. Let us close with prayer. I affirm, acknowledge, and proclaim that there is one source, one infinite divine power, spirit, God, known by many names, the very foundation and essence of all that is. And I affirm that I am of this one source. I am the divine in expression, uniquely expressing a point of consciousness within the allness. And as this is true for me, I accept that this is true for all of creation. I affirm that whatever obstacles there may seem to be, whatever circumstances, whatever situations, whatever experiences, regardless how difficult, regardless of how overwhelming, regardless of how seemingly impossible, that there is a deeper answer. There is a guidance. There is a divine pattern. There is a perfect pattern of peace, harmony, and love that is already fulfilled within the mind of God. It is already fulfilled within the divine mystery. And I affirm that each of us, individually and collectively, have within our reach the power to become open conduits, open channels through which that divine spirit works its way in the world. I affirm that each of us, in exactly the right way, are indeed and can become instruments of peace. This is my word. I speak it with authority, and I release it into that law, that creative process which is continually bringing forth into the world of form. And so it is. Amen. So I'd like to thank you for joining me tonight. I hope that you have been served. Please know that we are taking a break from these weekly Prayer in Unity streams for the rest of July, while we sit with what content and what format will be of best service going forward. I would also like to invite you, if you are able, to consider making a donation to support the Parliament of World Religions. The Parliament of World Religions was created to cultivate harmony among the world's religious and spiritual communities and foster their engagement with the world and its guiding institutions in order to achieve a just, peaceful, and sustainable world. A world in which religious and spiritual communities live in harmony and contribute to a better world from their riches of wisdom and compassion. A world in which religious and cultural fears and hatreds are replaced with understanding and respect. A world in which people everywhere come to know and care for their neighbors. A world in which the richness of human and religious diversity is woven into the fabric of communal, civil, societal, and global life. A world in which the world's most powerful and influential institutions move beyond narrow self-interest to realize common good. A world in which the earth and all life are cherished, protected, healed, and restored. And a world in which all people commit to living out their highest values and aspirations. If you are able and called to support their work, thank you in advance. You can find a link to their page in the description, and I believe we have a lower third up as well. Thank you for joining us tonight. I'm Reverend Simon Shadowlight with the Multifaith Leaders Forum of Metro Denver. Peace and blessings. Good night.